Kia ora tātou, te iwi o Ngāti Kahungunu. Thank you very much, and thank you, Ngaio, for the kind invitation, or it was more like a summons, actually, to speak here today. But it's my absolute pleasure to be here before you. I'm from the University of Otago. I wear a number of hats. I'm actually retired from teaching at the university. I retired about a year ago before it got too crazy. But I'm also a director of Southern Pacific Archaeological Research, which is a research unit at the University of Otago, and a co-director of Coastal People Southern Skies, which is a national centre of research excellence that we specialise in working with coastal communities, the coastal ecological resources, those resources and the communities they support, and we do that throughout New Zealand but also in the South Pacific. And tomorrow I'm going up to the Solomon Islands to do some work on cultural heritage up there. So, but I do have a connection here. Although I'm from Wellington myself, my mokos, my four mokopuna, whakapapa te Ngāti Kahungunu, and it's really by way of their whakapapa that I'm bold enough to stand up here today and talk to you all. I work in the area of cultural heritage, sites of significance. One of the things that I'm really concerned about is preserving and protecting the archaeological sites and other cultural sites of significance around the country. And so in a way, what I'm talking about connects really nicely to what Anthony was saying before. He was talking about the importance of linking kōrero whakapapa, the stories of the past, to the landscapes. I come from a slightly different perspective. I'm really interested in the landscapes themselves, the cultural sites, the archaeological sites, what we can learn from them and how we can protect them. And as you all know, as we're acutely aware from some of the talks today, we are in constant threat from climate change and cultural processes. Over 99% of the archaeological sites in New Zealand are within a kilometre of the coast, and our coastlines are constantly under threat from climate change, coastal erosion, storm events. This is a photo, for example, that Mare referenced. I think, yes, this is just over there, Cape Kidnappers Te Kauea Maui, where we can see a site that is being washed into the sea. And when Mare and I were there first a few years ago, very sadly it was to recover kōiwi which had been washed out and were now being exposed on the sands of the beach there. And Mare, carefully, we gathered them up and Mare had them reburied, which is the appropriate thing to do, of course. But it's not just cultural processes, it's us as well. The development activities around this coastline and other coastlines in New Zealand are causing immense damage to archaeological sites and cultural places. We're seeing an increasing number of really important sites in this country passing into foreign ownership, and we're not knowing in the future what's going to happen to them. Even simple things like farming that seem quite benign at first glance can, in the long run, cause problems. This is the wonderful site at Kairako of Manuarako, that past site, and if you look along the edges you can see that the entire site is slowly dropping into the sea. It's being washed away by erosion, but as you walk along that site, along the ridge there, you can still see the places where people lived. You can see the kumara pits, you can see some of the middens, the food remains they left behind. In fact, in the last couple of years, kōiwi have been washed out of there as well. But this is not going to last. This site and so many more are going to be damaged and lost into the future. So it's really important, I guess, that those stories that Anthony talked about at least remain with these places. I'll just talk about some of the work I've been doing with various communities around the Hawke's Bay over the last 10 years or so. This was at Te Kawe Maui at Cape Kidnappers, following the work that me and Marae did. We went back to that site to figure out what that site actually was. And we were pleased. Marae was just saying to me this morning, thank goodness we found it was a kāinga and not an urupa. So it was a village. There was a beautiful village there. Part of it is still there. Most of it is being washed away. It dates to the 14 to 1500. So it's very early, long before Cook came sailing into the harbour here. So what we were doing there is we were just trying to understand the site in advance of its loss. We did similar work at Kairako, working with the Kairako Land Trust, with Stella August, Wiki Moore and their whānau from Kairako. We were looking at the sites there that are being washed into the river, trying to recover information in advance of that loss, and mapping other sites around the Kairako area. And we even ran a nice little workshop there, and this is the end of the day when we'd been mapping sites on the bluffs above Kairako. Again, horrified by the level of erosion. This is just taking these important places away. Here's work at Ocean Beach, just further around the Cape. I was asked to go there first of all again for the sad mahi of recovering koiwi which were being washed out of the beach there. We later did some more work along those sites. A number of people here joined us, which was really great. And we were looking at the sites that were being systematically washed out of the dunes and out of those low bluffs right along Ocean Beach. It's a place of immense history and so many archaeological sites, heritage places. It's a really rich landscape. In fact, this entire landscape is really rich in history and in the archaeology. And recently, only a week or so ago, we were up in Tukituki catchment looking at some of the sites up there along the rivers and trying to see what sites are still there, what sites have been lost, and what sites might be lost in the future. So this is the sort of work I've been doing, working with local interest groups, local communities, trying to pull little projects together, usually funded out of my University of Otago funding, squeezing some money here and there, trying to run these little projects that will help understand the state of the landscapes, the historical heritage landscapes in this part of the country, what threats they're faced and what we can do in the future. So where are we now? I would say, and you may correct me if you feel I'm wrong, but development is, in my view, out of control, or at least out of step with the heritage needs of our wider communities. There is a lot of danger from development activities at the moment. But of course, there's also climate change, and this is possibly one of the biggest threats to archaeological and heritage sites in New Zealand. The flooding of sites in the lowlands along the river valleys. You're already aware of what's happening to a lot of the urupa, but many other sites are also being damaged as flooding increases and as climates change, sea levels rise with the warming. So the big question is, what can we do about this? Well, the standard answer is that there are tools to manage the resources. There's the Resource Management Act, and this deals with historic and heritage sites of significance. It's well understood and well resourced, but it only protects sites that are listed in district plans. And that's only a very small number of sites. Just as an aside, that's one of the reasons I'm a little bit hesitant or nervous about the term sites of significance, because it implies that there are sites that aren't significant. And in my view, all sites are significant. And that's where we turn to the Heritage New Zealand Poheri Taonga Act, which actually does give blanket protection to every archaeological site in the country, whether it is known or whether it is unknown. It's an incredibly powerful act, one of the most powerful pieces of heritage legislation in the world, but it's very poorly resourced, it's poorly understood, and it's often ignored. Now, I also got to issue another warning. The Resource Management Act is going to change, and a lot of us working in the heritage sector are terrified that the government is going to remove heritage protections. And we don't know if that happens. I can't predict. I didn't vote for them, but we don't know what's going to happen. I also, just as an aside here, note that archaeological sites are only a small portion of the overall sites of significance. So there is a bit of a mix and match between the Resource Management Act and the Heritage New Zealand Poheri Taonga Act. But when we see development activities taking place, it's really important that we consider the second of these. For example, I'll give you an example. About 3 weeks ago, I was asked to go to a place very close to where I live, outside of Dunedin, where the council was building a basketball court, and they were ploughing through a 1300 AD moa hunting site. And when I went down and said, hey guys, they said, look, it's permitted activity under the district plan, and indeed it was. But it was totally protected under the HPA, and we put a stop to it smartly. The HPA, and I think Anthony might have comments on this, the HPA trumps the RMA when it comes to archaeological site protection. Okay, but both of these things are technical, difficult to deal with. The point I really want to make here is something that Ngaio and I have been talking about for a while, and that's what communities can do. And I've been talking to my family here with Zach and Georgie and their families and the people I work with, Mare, Ngaio and others. I'm really interested in running some cultural heritage workshops where we can train up local communities. In fact, Levi helped me with one once. Yeah, Levi and I worked on one of these a long time ago now, but there's so much that we can do as individuals, how we can recognise archaeological sites, how we can make sure they're protected, how we can record them and link them to those kōrero that Anthony was talking about. So I've just dropped in an example of a workshop program I ran in Blenheim recently with your distant whānau Rangitāne o Wairau. And we did a 3-day workshop training people up how to recognise these sites, how to look at what's the risk, what's the opportunity for preservation, what's the opportunity to restore and manage. So anyway, it was out of this discussion that Ngaio asked me to come here today, just to let you know what we're doing, in case you see me wandering around the rohi and with different groups of people. This is my interest, my passion. Although I'm retired, or should be retired, it's my mokos that I'm worried about, especially when I see them on that beautiful papakainga that their grandparents have just built. I see them looking out at the land there, and I'm wondering what their future's going to be. Are they going to be living in a rich historical landscape where the stories and the sites are all around them, speaking to them of their tupuna, of their past, of their history, of their identity? So that's me, and Ngaio and I will continue our long, slow conversations, and perhaps we can do something together into the future. Kia ora. Thank you.